Joining us now is Bradley Moss. He's a lawyer over at the Mark Zaid law firm. He's actually specializing in classified materials. Brad, you and I have known each other for a long time, political differences and all that aside. You're a legitimate expert, and you and I were actually talking ahead of the raid, and you were the person who told me that this was likely what it was all about. So let's start at the beginning. You put out a thread a couple of months ago as to how exactly the classification process and all that works, what it would take for the president to break the law in the case, in so far and what we know in all this. Could you just lay that out for the audience, given your experience litigating some of these matters?
Sure, absolutely. So when Donald Trump was president, he, under Article 2 of the Constitution, had unlimited, unfettered discretion to classify or declassify anything he wanted. He could handle classified information however he wanted. But when Joe Biden took the oath of office at noon on January 20th, 2021, Donald Trump lost any and all authority he had over classified information. So when he left the White House and decamped to Mar-a-Lago, we know he took all kinds of documents. He just boxed everything up and shipped it down to Mar-a-Lago. And in those documents, or in those boxes, we know there were countless classified, properly marked, still classified documents that got shipped down to Mar-a-Lago and were sitting in a basement there in boxes. This is a problem for a couple reasons. One, the Presidential Records Act says those aren't his documents. Those are historical presidential records. They are the property of the United States, and they're supposed to go to the National Archive first to be sorted, documented, logged, and set aside to ultimately put in the archives, as well as in any library Donald Trump would create. The second problem, though, the bigger issue, and this is why there's a criminal liability, is that there are still properly marked classified documents in there. He's not allowed to carry classified documents anymore. He's not allowed to transport them on the Mayflower, shipping trucks. He's not allowed to store them at Mar-a-Lago in the basement. They have to be put in secure locations. That's been his problem here, is that he was grossly negligent and completely inexcusably unethical in how he handled these documents. We know they found 15 boxes of documents back in February that were shipped to the archives. And just in June, we're hearing the reporting, they found more classified documents in Mar-a-Lago.
Got it.
So I have a lot of questions for you. One of them that came up earlier in Saagar and I's discussion is there some sort of formal process that when he was the president that he would have to follow in order to get those documents declassified? Or can he just sort of look at a box of 15 boxes ready to ship to Mar-a-Lago and say, these are all now declassified, because I say so. Do they have to have those markings removed? Does there have to be some official process, some official record keeping? Or can he just sort of blanket declassify things at his whim when he was still president?
Yes, very good question. And it's actually something that came up in litigation that we were handling and that some other FOIA litigants were handling during the Trump era. He cannot just spout off verbally a declassification. He can't declassify something in his mind. He can't just tell someone it's declassified. There is a formal process. The documents have to be taken aside. They have to be, there's classification markings at the header and the footer of every single page. They have to be marked off. There has to be what is called a declassification stamp put on every single page that identifies when it was declassified and who declassified it. All that has to be done to actually turn the documents into a declassified document. However much authority he had to verbally say, I want it declassified, I order it declassified, until that process was done, documents still have to be treated as classified. And it's not shocking with everything we know with the Trump administration that the details of how this worked is something that completely flew past him.
Yeah, we already covered, actually, Kash Patel, who works for him, already blaming the White House counsel. This happened in May. So, Brad, then this relates to then the next question, which I know you've addressed previously on criminality. So what is the standard through which the DOJ would be able to bring an indictment, having litigated some of this in court? You use the word grossly negligent. James Comey used the word famously with Hillary. She wasn't actually prosecuted. So then what rises to the level of prosecution for the Department of Justice?
Yeah, so there's a couple different provisions that could come into play. Some of them are it's all in the U.S. code, 18 USC 793D, as well as 793F. These technically fall under the Espionage Act, but they're really provisions we consider to be what we call Official Secrets Act provisions. Basically, it says someone who originally had lawful authorized access to the classified information either willfully allows it to be communicated or transported to an unsecured personal location. They are grossly negligent in allowing it to be transported to the unsecured location, or they become aware that it's in an unsecured location and they take no steps to rectify that. There is an intent requirement, of course. This famously came up in the Hillary Clinton saga with the email server, and that would be certainly something that I'm sure the grand jury is investigating with respect to how these records came to Mar-a-Lago. Any prosecution of a former president is going to be politically controversial. The Justice Department isn't going to bring an indictment unless they have what they view as a rock solid case. They're going to want proof that Trump was completely negligent in what he was doing, that he knew what he was doing, that he didn't care, that he brought the documents there anyways, and that he left them there even when warned that there were documents there and continued to leave them there. They're going to want to have an open and shut case. And I think we're going to be waiting a little bit still to see if there are any indictments that come out of this.
Yeah.
How often is this crime or similar crimes related to classified documents charged?
So generally speaking, most of the time it's not, because most of the time you're talking about mid-level bureaucrats, people who took, classified documents home, who took some. There was, the infamous case of an NSA official who had been secretly storing documents for years. Usually it's sufficient for the government's purposes just to revoke the person's security clearance, to fire them, possibly even seek civil damages. But there are select cases where they do choose to bring prosecutions, and they generally win when they do so, because there's not a lot of leeway or discretion here. Generally speaking, it's for the more egregious of the cases. There's the infamous ones of the Navy seamen who took photos in the nuclear submarine. There's NSA officials who took stuff home. General Petraeus stored, code word classified notebooks in his attic and had to plead guilty to a misdemeanor. There are several prosecutions that have happened. It certainly is not out of the question that it could happen here.
Right. And so that actually was what I was going to ask about. So I've seen some comparison to the Petraeus case. I believe Sandy Berger and a few other officials have been gone after. Now, whenever they were they actually prosecuted? Did they reach a plea deal? What was the actual punishment?
So Sandy Berger and General Petraeus both pled guilty to misdemeanors in order to avoid more serious felony charges. We don't know how those prosecutions would have gone forward and what would have resulted if the government had actually pursued cases. They reached plea deals with both individuals. Both of them got probation, fines. I think Sandy Berger, had his security clearance stripped. That's, somewhat expected. And it's not to say that with Donald Trump that he would necessarily even go to prison for this, depending on the full factual circumstances, which we don't know yet.
Right.
There certainly could be something less.
So to that point, obviously sort of the thorniest question here is not all crimes are charged, not all crimes are even, thoroughly investigated. As you indicated earlier, the fact that this is the former president of the United States makes this extraordinarily politically sensitive. And so I want to get your reaction to some of the commentary that suggests this isn't a bad enough crime for this raid to have occurred and for this level of sort of intrusion investigation to be going on. And, you even had some figures on the Democratic side. Andrew Cuomo was out with a tweet this morning saying the DOJ must immediately explain the reason for its raid, and it must be more than a search for inconsequential archives, or it will be viewed as a political tactic and undermine any future credible investigation and legitimacy of January 6th investigations. What is your view of that sort of line of critique of this action by the FBI and the Department of Justice?
Sure. So if this were just about archived records, if this were just about a Presidential Records Act violation and nothing was classified, then I'd be pretty much in agreement with Mr. Cuomo and the others saying this is, overreach, because that could be handled through a civil suit. The reason there's a grand jury, the reason that a search warrant had to even be sought and executed here was because there's classified documents, including, again, this is all based off reporting, so we don't know what the FBI truly has. We don't know what was in the search warrant affidavit, even though Mr. Trump can make that public. We don't know for certain how high level of classification the documents were. Reporting says it was up to top secret, including some compartmentalized documents that only certain people would even have had access to in the first place. So the sensitivity level of the documents would certainly come into play in terms of how egregious of a violation this is. If this was just archived records, they're all unclassified, this wouldn't require criminal inquiry. Reason it's classified is why it's a problem.
Yeah, and so then, then taking it one further, actually something you and I had talked about, it's possible also that Trump himself is not the target of this investigation. Is that right? It could be the people around him, and the materials were simply at Mar-a-Lago. Is that within the realm of possibility?
It's absolutely within the realm of possibilities. He is notoriously disconnected from the administrative realities of day-to-day operations. We certainly know he wasn't packing any boxes or doing anything along those lines. We don't know how much he knew about where the records were stored, who was handling them, what efforts were being taken to separate classified from unclassified. The only reason that I think he might be a target at this point, and this is based off obviously new information we've had since you and I talked, was that they went into the safe. They had to open up a safe in his personal office, and then they had met with him and his lawyers in just June, just 2 months ago, and found more classified documents. That gives me additional reason to suspect he might in fact be a target, but I would not be surprised to see someone lower level in his staff be the true target of this. We will just have to wait and see. And remember, grand jury proceedings are secret.
Yep.
What would the FBI have had to prove in order to get a judge to sign off on this warrant? And what sort of information would that warrant contain?
Sure. So the standard, is simply that there is probable cause that a crime was committed. You have to identify the specific crimes or crimes that you believe were committed, and you have to identify where you are searching and why you are searching there. So there'd be both the standard template form on the front of it, which is the search warrant itself, and then there would be an affidavit, a sworn affidavit from the relevant FBI official outlining what's already been done in the investigation, what they've already found, why they have reason to believe that there is evidence of a crime that's going to be located in the evidence at Mar-a-Lago, and where in Mar-a-Lago they want to search. They have to identify particular locations. They can't just go roaming around the entire facility. They had to have very specific details. And I suspect that if we ever do see the search affidavit, we're going to see a lot of detailed information about exactly why they went to Mar-a-Lago and where they looked at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Brad, it's been very helpful. Really appreciate your analysis here, man. And thank you for taking time this morning. Appreciate it.
Brown, have a good one.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. I had to scram. This is what we live for, folks. It's like 7:30, and we're like, all right, well, we have to change literally the entire show.
Cool.
It's all good.
Try again.
Yeah, off the treadmill, become presidential records experts, have to rebook guests, but that's why we do it. And we have the capability, I really mean this, thanks to all of you.
Yeah.
Remake the entire show, pay for all the extra time, etc. And so I'm so thankful to all of the people who make this happen, all of our premium members and more. So thank you all very much. If you have the ability, the link is down in the description. Otherwise, we will see you all on Thursday with probably some even more explosive information.
Yeah, who knows what will come out between now and then. Stay tuned, as they say. Love you guys. See you soon. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.